Well, first of all, thank you very much indeed for coming at such short notice at the end of a busy semester. This will probably take about 40 minutes maximum, but it depends partly how much you want to talk. But I will say what I have to say within about half an hour, and we can have perhaps 10 minutes for discussion. And then what I want to do is to introduce the concept of English as a medium of instruction as we speak, to talk about possible needs, because we know that it's going on, but at the moment there is no systematic support from certainly the internationalization office. We want to begin to give systematic support, but it's a big and diverse institution. So we want to know what your priorities are as we do this, and then perhaps look at going forward with different priorities first, depending on what you want English as a medium of instruction, or EMI, to do. So what I thought I would do is just very quickly talk about the context and first steps in meeting your needs and looking at the support that you might want. First of all, I'll put English as a medium of instruction into a little bit of context, talk about EMI at USP. I've stolen the idea from Aucani Idiomas at USP, languages at USP. One of the things that I've done is I developed a faculty survey, which I would like you, if possible, to complete after this. It will take you about 15 minutes. And one of the things that it will do is to identify how you feel about EMI, what you think the priorities are, and then we can begin to move more effectively towards satisfying those. The next step, ideally, in my head, because I do have ideas, is to develop probably flexible blended learning support. So because this is a huge institution, diverse disciplines, different campuses, FFLCH, medical faculty. Do you teach in the Universidade de São Paulo? In Pinheiros. I've been down to Pinheiros. So I know that I've been moving around different, not everybody can come to the Universidade for support. So some of the support will be online. And then I'm hoping that we will also have face-to-face meetings for those who can make it intermittently to discuss issues, to share good practice. And we're also planning for there to be a conference, probably around the end of October, which will bring people who are engaged in English as a medium of instruction around Brazil and internationally to USP to share our experiences and to share our practices. So that's basically what we're going to do today. There will be time for you to talk, because it's just me. Okay. If you take a look at the growth, the sudden and rather startling growth of English as a medium of instruction around the world, and before I came here, I was working in an English medium university in Macau, beside Hong Kong. People give different reasons for extending EMI to universities around the world. Some of these may apply to USP, some of them may not. One common reason is to attract faculty and students from other countries. I've been working with a medical university in Taiwan, which adopted EMI to attract students from Japan, largely. Because if you know Taiwan, you'll know that the school roll is falling, the population is falling, universities want to attract more and more overseas students. Not many people in the target country speak Mandarin Chinese, so they want to teach them English. That's less of a reason for USP. USP has an overseas student population of about 4%, and that's small in the university rankings. There is a hope to internationalize USP by attracting exchange students here. The exchange students might not speak Portuguese. They might. A lot of the exchange students that I meet come from other Latin American countries. They speak Spanish, and the shift to Portuguese is not as big as the shift to English. So this might not be the main reason why we're doing EMI at USP, but it's a growing reason. There is a growing internationalization of the students. There's also I'm part of a internationalization of faculty. Historically, I think it's fair to say, especially since I am not being recorded, that it's quite difficult for overseas faculty to break into USP. It's very much a Brazilian institution. One of the reasons why I'm here is there has been an attempt to internationalize the faculty, and one of the ways of doing that is through international fellows. Some of us speak Portuguese, some of us don't. If you're going to attract international faculty, it is likely that at least some of them will teach through English. So that will have an impact upon local students as well as international students. But at the moment, I would say that these are two fairly minor reasons for adopting UMI. Probably a stronger reason is to prepare Brazilian students for international experience. We've had the Ciências Sem Fronteiras experience. It was a mixed success. One of the problems was that the Portuguese-speaking Brazilian students who went abroad were not sufficiently competent in English to make the best of that experience. Not everybody, but in many situations, that was a complaint. They went, they failed, they came back. So one of the reasons for intensifying the English provision at USP is to internationalize the local population. It's not just to bring in students from elsewhere. We are living in a globalized labour market. I know that my wife is a private language teacher in Sao Paulo. She's teaching students because in businesses, because the businesses have been taken over by American companies, by Chinese companies, and Chinese is the language that is being used in Sao Paulo for these international organizations. So it's to prepare students for a globalized labour market. And it's not just the case that Brazilians are going elsewhere, it's that international companies are coming here and they're working in English. So there's the intention to prepare students for that. So that is probably a major driver for EMI at USP. It's going to be internationalization at home. So internationalizing students here to go out. Yes, so I should read the notices here. The international academic environment at home at USP. But there is a very real, solid reason for doing that, and that is because the world is coming here, as well as we are going out to the world. Another major driver, I have a certain amount of cynicism about this, as I'm sure many people have, is to raise the international rankings of the university. As you all know, there are different markers of international quality. And one of them is what is your percentage of overseas faculty and what is your percentage of overseas students. I came from Glasgow University, which is about 25% overseas students. Hey, Chinese. Come in.
Yes, Professor. Yes, please.
Yes.
Yes, here.
Sorry. No, it's okay.
It's so late.
No, you're very lost.
Sorry.
No, you're welcome.
The instructions were not very clear, so we did a bit of parkour until we got to that.
I spent 30 minutes wandering around,
Oh, yes.
but I arrived an hour early. That's an American.
Right.
Yes, as I was saying, to raise a profound ranking position of the university, 25% overseas students in Glasgow. In Macau, they say they have 27% overseas students, but they count Chinese mainland students as overseas. So there are ways of playing their ranking games. Here again, USP is very, very low in its overseas students numbers for historical and structural reasons. So there might be arguments for trying to change that, but that will actually be, I think, quite difficult in USP because it will have structurally to change. And the way that it recruits students and the way that it recruits staff might have to change. Possibly the most important of these reasons for many of us, but again, this is part of a discussion that I'm hoping we'll have, is in many disciplines to prepare students for research, where English is the lingua franca of the discipline. So if you're teaching medicine, it's difficult to research in medicine or engineering or economics without access to English language research. It slows you down if you can't have English. It holds you back. And what I've been doing so far here is mainly working with postgraduate students who want to publish in English, either in Aucani or in medicine. And obviously, I'm so glad I'm not young anymore, because the pressures on young academics to publish in top quality journals now is very, very fierce, very intense. So I'll just close that.
It's closed.
I'm just trying to find that. But there's obviously pressure. I don't know in your disciplines, but when I was working at the University of Macau, the students had to publish at least one article in a ranked indexed Web of Science journal in English before they were allowed to graduate with a PhD. So there's lots of students in their final year scrambling around for an indexed article. And this applies to things like the Chinese department, the Portuguese department. So you're in a curious situation in Macau of being Chinese, working in a university in China, studying Chinese linguistics, but you must publish in English. And you must publish in English to graduate and certainly for promotion. Once you're a staff member, if you're not competent in English, they make you do 2 articles in Chinese for every article in English in the Chinese department. The only people who complain about this were the native speaker English. This is crazy. The Chinese are going, no. This is how we get ahead. So there's tremendous pressure now, particularly on non-academics, to publish in internationally visible publications, and that means at the moment, publishing in English. So I think that's probably the most urgent reason. For me, when I'm looking at it, that for me is probably the major driver at the moment. But you might disagree, and that's one of the reasons why we're having this meeting, is that I'm kind of interested in which of these reasons or other reasons you think might be pushing EMI USP. These questions matter because if we're going to provide support to you, then I need to know what you think the support is. Is it because you've got a lot of overseas students coming into your classes? I think probably no, but you might say, no, John, there are. Or is it because you want to help Brazilian students structure their work so they can get published? Or you might say all of these, which will give me a logistical problem.
I have another thing. I was talking to one of my students who are taking a biology course, one of the higher, 3rd or 4th year. They said that the teacher was speaking in English, or lectures were in English, all of the reading. The teacher was speaking in Portuguese, talking in Portuguese, but all the reading was in English, and they were just foundering so strongly. And so even though the course was originally, officially Portuguese in the instruction, they just didn't have that material translated into Portuguese. The teacher didn't have the reference material to give them in Portuguese.
That's very important.
So, and when we're speaking in class, there's only just so many words we speak, and we speak slowly and clearly, we can ask questions. But when they're reading textbooks that are meant, not for them, but for native speakers.
Yeah.
I think that perhaps we need to focus on giving them more support for reading the English.
Yeah. So that's very important. It kind of comes into the final preparing students for research and conditions for English as lingua franca scientific inquiry, because English is for many subjects, English is the accepted language or lingua franca for
What wasn't even research, it was just like a 3rd year biology course for the biology majors.
Okay.
It wasn't graduate course, it was just,
Okay, even undergraduate.
so it's undergrad. And I know that the market here in Brazil for academic books is there. They're not translating, I know how much they pay translators.
So I think it's because of the pressure we have to publish in English. Everything we have to do, we rank much better when we publish in English. So why publish in Portuguese? It's so difficult to find publishers. And to publish also.
No, textbooks, that's the problem. So there aren't any textbooks for a lot of, beyond the basic math and Portuguese, math and English, math and physics, basic first year.
That's a very, very useful point, so thank you for that. And one of the things that you need to think about is the ways in which, even if a teacher is teaching in Portuguese, how they can provide support for students who are reading nevertheless textbooks in English at undergraduate level.
Exactly.
That's a good point. So these are exactly the kind of points that I'm hoping that meetings like this will raise for you, so that we can see where the problems are and begin to know that problems and begin to address them. Okay. Because I'm currently in between positions in this institution, I am an international fellow. I've just been offered a permanent job, but I'm not yet permanently employed here. So there are certain databases that I can and cannot get access to at this stage. Because the postgraduate information is public, I know that there are 85 courses in the coming semester being taught, or at least being offered in English at this school. If you go to the KNS website, they're listed. And as you can see, there are different faculties. There's Aucani, FMRP, I don't know what that is.
Yes, we're gonna take the.
Or we're going to medicine, VZ. Liberal press was doing a lot of liberal press, obviously, in medicine now. IAG, EAF. The nursing faculty obviously is doing quite a lot. Somebody was talking about nurse. I think the nurses wanted to be here, but couldn't be here today. So there's a lot going on. One of the things that concerns me is to what extent are these people talking to each other, and to what extent can we learn from the people who are actually delivering. So one of the things that I'll be doing as a matter of urgency is reaching out to the people who are actually doing it. Is any one of you one of these people?
Part of these courses.
Are you offering
One of
courses?
these courses in
My course is free.
Okay, so it's not part of this.
No, it's not part of this. It's not a discipline.
It's an extension course.
It is kind of an extension course. It's voluntary, but lots of people come because of the need I have. So they take about 2 months. There are 2 writing levels and 1 for presentation skills. It's not just the language, but also.
And this is an engineering faculty, but not just for engineers.
No, because the interest is so
Yeah,
big.
yeah, but you're
People
basically-
from other units are coming.
Okay, but your home is in the engineering
Yeah.
faculty. Because that's kind of interesting, because again, it's symptomatic of what USP is like.
Yes.
Things happen, but other people
And
kind of.
this semester, for the first time, my courses have been online.
Okay.
It's also perhaps interesting to say that you are doing that for a long time, right?
Just like 5 years.
But yeah, but you are involved in other actions or similar kind of support
No, I'm
or
always working on English for specific purposes here, yes. And so raising the needs, we saw that the need was published, and then we started working on that. I mean, regularly as from 2006.
That's good to know. Because I am sure that there is good practice and there are initiatives going on in different parts of it because it's so big. When I go down to Izalki, I can see that there are like 2 or 3 different people delivering English in different ways down there. But they don't necessarily, there's not necessarily a sense of coordination or a sense of even much interaction.
I would like to exchange more.
Yeah,
It's enriching.
that's what I would like. I'm hoping that we can identify a place where people can actually communicate better. And I don't want to constrain what we're doing or change what you're doing. I just want greater communication between us. But that's what I can find out. Certainly, and these are credit-bearing courses, so these are not extension courses, as far as I know, at postgraduate level. But undergraduate level, I simply don't know because I can't get access to it.
Yeah, so in fact, it's interesting to say that in grad studies, it's easier to identify because you go to the website or to our systems and it's really clear. In the undergrad, it's not clear. I'm personally offering one at Poly, Cognitive Systems,
Okay.
but it's one of the few. I'm not really sure how many others there are at the engineering school. I know that there is something in the business school, but but it's hard to identify because in fact, if you just take a look at the names, they are, so both Portuguese and English, but the true information is that this semester it's offered in English.
Okay.
So then you need to go through in
So you have to
the
take-
syllables. Yeah, it's crazy. So we are trying to make some changes in the systems in order to make it clear,
That would
and
be
even to promote this kind of things.
That would be very, very helpful. I have an undergraduate student, those of us who think of undergraduate students as slaves. And what I'm hoping is that she will actually do the digging and she'll start collecting this information. I'm also talking to Sandra in the international office, who tells me that she might be able to find out more. But I'm curious to know what kind of provision is given. I know that it must be there, but I don't know what it is. You're right, it is much easier to find the post.
But being also searching this information, it's not that easy to.
Yeah. So that's one of the things I'm hoping to, I'm glad that you're trying to make changes in the system because it should be easier to find out.
Yes. Ele já.
Oh, sorry.
I will give you a course next semester to undergraduate.
Okay, so you'll be doing it at USU.
Yes.
What subject?
The course international integration
Okay, in marketing.
in marketing.
Yeah.
Actually, the course is my undergraduate. I have finished to the course of marketing, but the subject is economics subject. Constantly into international relations.
Okay. That's great, thank you. So what we'll try to do is get a survey. I will show you a survey that we're planning to send out to people. I'm hoping that will actually give us more information.
I do have information.
Okay.
I work at the disciplinas,
Okay.
and since I came from my postdoc at the University mission, I realized that we need something to teach them and do some seminars.
Okay.
And I created one, what's the name? It's a post-graduation discipline linked to transgenic
Okay.
animals to study endocrinology.
Yeah.
And then I decided to have somebody outside of the country to come and give 1 week deep seminar in English.
Okay.
And since I began, I have 3 different speakers.
Okay.
And during the whole week, they were forced to present in English, all the papers, to have the classes in English. But I realized that I've done this 3 times, and I had just 10 students. Because when I told them that we are going through 1 week deep seminar in English, because we're going to have 1 week somebody coming out of the country, I don't know, I think that they thought, oh, I'm not gonna do that.
How many people do you normally have?
10.
Okay.
10 the first time, 6 the third,
Okay.
6 the second, and 4 the third.
Okay, so the numbers will choose to be.
Yes, and I was so disappointed because I was bringing people outside of the country with very good expertise to talk about transgenic animal and also zebrafish. That's something very, very new, and I didn't have anybody in the classes.
That actually is the first point on this slide. General issues for EMI. And I think this case can speak to all of us. The student proficiency and the lecturer proficiency can sometimes be a concern. When I was investigating this in Taiwan, some of the students said that their proficiency was better than the lecturers. They were paying university fees to listen to their lecturers practice their English, was the complaint. So sometimes lecturers can lack competence or confidence in their own proficiency. Sometimes when the lecturers are very good, the students can lack competence and confidence. So that can be a concern. In this situation, which I'm sure is replicated around at USP, one of the issues would then be how can we prepare students for what could be a cultural shock of suddenly finding themselves in a seminar with experts talking about zebrafish. Can we scaffold that experience so that they are more likely to take advantage of it? So these are the kind of issues, again, that we can think of trying to give support for, trying to give advice for. So that could be developing materials for students. You can also be developing materials for staff who are wanting to take advantage of this kind of thing. But it's very, very useful, again, at a meeting like this to share that this is a problem, that this is happening, and that this is the kind of experience.
So they haven't been told one thing, because I've been teaching English for specific purposes. And I remember I taught some reading lessons at the Mackenzie Institute of Languages Center. And I had a mixed group. But then at the beginning of the course, one of them was having extreme difficulty. I can't do it. I don't think I will be ready for the exam. But then, towards the end of the course, I gave each one something of their own expertise. Then when I gave him a text on economics, he said, I can't understand anything. I said, of course, you know. So you have to tell them, you have to inform them that if they know the subject in their own language, the first half an hour, 1 hour will be difficult. But at the end of the day, because they know the subject. So something
Exactly.
beforehand will help them a lot.
It's the same with me with Portuguese. If I know the
Of course,
subject,
yes. Transferring knowledge.
it's very knowledge. So what we can do is give advice to lecturers, but also perhaps support to students in situations like this. That's great. So thank you. In general, this is not history. In general, there's a lack of research into the implementation of the enlightenment institutions. This is a worldwide explosion. People are beginning to look into it and publishing on it and find out what are the common problems around the globe, not just here. But that research is still fairly new. It has to be said that it's something that we at USP want to get into. The education faculty, but certainly in lecturers, we're interested in looking at USP as a research site as well as a site of practice and to contribute to the global research into EMI. There's differences in learning culture across international institutions. So if you're taking students in internationally, if you've got students from China, from Japan, from Europe, we will be used to a different style of learning perhaps. And that is, so it's not just a language issue, it's a cultural issue. Also for sending students abroad, they will come into contact with different learning styles. I know it was a bit of a shock for me as a professor in Macau for students to leave the room, bow to me and thank me for my wisdom before they left. I never knew if they were being entirely serious, but it's the most polite students I've ever seen. And I thought, well, if a Chinese professor ever sees a Scottish student who doesn't do that, what will they think? So there are different learning styles across the world. So one of the issues around EMI is, do we need to prepare people for different cultural styles as well as linguistic styles? This comes back to your point. EMI can be perceived as a threat to home language and culture. If you're a Portuguese language academic publisher, you're not very happy at the moment because institutions are turning towards English and therefore the market for Portuguese publications is shrinking. And I know in my own faculty, there's a vigorous debate about should we protect the Portuguese language by continuing to publish in Portuguese, or do we go for international visibility? It doesn't need to be entirely either or, but there's obviously an economic dynamics to that.
Economic dynamics, here we have to pay to publish in Portuguese, so it's not very encouraging.
Great difference.
There's also an increasing move towards publishing to pay for publishing in English just because of open source publishing as well. So yeah, the medics are used to this. They build it into their grants. They know how to do it. But it's we're learning from each other's disciplines as much as anything. There is a concern that English as a medium of instruction is an additional obstacle to most students. If you're a Brazilian student and you want to be an engineer or a medic or a marketer, you say, well, yeah, well, I'm a good doctor. Why do I need English? I'm a good engineer. Why do I need to study a language? So it's an additional talent. If you're an English speaker, you haven't got that obstacle if you're a language. So there is that too. Some people are good at languages, some people are not. And if you're a good engineer but a bad linguist, then you might say there's an issue of fairness or equality. There is the need for training and linguistic support. we haven't systematically been providing it. I know that for 25 years, people have been providing it, but we don't really know much about what's going on overall in USP, and it would be nice to talk to each other. Faculty sometimes, this is not necessarily USP, this is general around the world. Faculty are reluctant to teaching MI courses for lack of incentive. I think at USP we actually pay them a little bit more.
Yes, they do.
So there is a financial incentive.
It is more work for most positions.
Just more work.
And,
Lots of work.
many people I know, in my department, they were begged to teach in English. And for me, it was easier, of course, so I was like, okay, thank you. But, I know that it took about twice as long to prepare the classes in English.
Yeah.
And I had one colleague who was teaching electrical engineering, and he taught the same class he did in Portuguese from 8 to 10, and then English from 10 to noon. And he said that he found that he was more energetic doing English, it was new to him. And so he felt that he was actually doing a disservice for the Portuguese students from 8 to 10, because he would get there at 10, he'd be all revved up and he'd be excited, he'd be more engaging as a professor during the English 2 hours. Because it was new to him, it was a challenge, because he taught that class every year for 10 years, so.
So kind of re-energized them.
He re-energized him, so, and also, he felt that his English improved because he was preparing the class and practicing, forcing himself to practice. And that his talks, when he gave talks at conferences, that it was easier for him to give talks at conferences.
That makes perfect sense.
So there are incentives outside of money.
Yes, that's true. But that's very interesting that he felt re-energized, because some people, I think it's slightly further down, professional building identity over the years in the EMI might affect that identity. That's one of the few examples of a positive, I think. When we talk to people who have switched from home language to EMI, very often they say, well, it's the same lecture, but it's not as funny. I can't express my whole personality in the second language. When we've taken a look at professors who do what you're doing, what you're reporting, who teach in the home language and in English, we find that they don't make jokes as much in English as they do. They don't tell stories, they don't humanize the lectures as much in the second language. So there's a question there about not just about delivering the subject content in the second language, but developing or delivering your personality in the second language. You have to train yourself to make the jokes and tell the stories in a way that the students will understand them. I won't talk about my own strategy. But there is a change in identity. It can be a positive or a negative or a neutral thing, but there is a change in identity when you go through that. So we have to recognize that and support that change. You said people were being pressured into teaching in English, and often it's a top-down initiative that meets with kind of southern resistance and reluctance, as many top-down initiatives do. So people have to be persuaded of the benefit of teaching in EMI for themselves and for the students. By itself, it's not going to, don't tell the vice rector, the vice principal, by itself it's not going to increase internationalization. It's not going to guarantee better quality publications, more competency, but it's part of internationalization. And there is sensitivity at some institutions that the introduction of ELI can cause friction within departments. That some people are doing English and some people are not doing English. You create, like everything, once you create a distinction, there's a class division. So friction's going to arise. So we have to take a look at the ecosystem, the departmental ecosystems, and make sure that that is not being disrupted by ELI. So these are things that, I don't know if you recognize these or you want to add to them.
Another thing, when I first taught multivariable calculus in English, and I asked my students, 60 students, why are you taking multivariable calculus in English? What are those? I mean, I knew French when I was in college, and you could not have paid me money to take multivariable calculus in French.
You couldn't pay me to take it home.
And I just didn't understand, and they said that at least there's a reputation that the classes taught in English were better, that the professors were better, that professors were more involved in the teaching, more involved with the students. It was a reputation that those of us teaching English had gotten in the math, that the math and even the physics, the math and physics courses taught undergraduate in English were better quality.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's true. I think mine was close, but I don't know if it's true in general. But it's interesting that we got a reputation.
Yeah.
This reputation was before I started, so it wasn't me. But it's interesting that there was like the word on the street. The other students said, take the EMI course, it's going to be better.
Yeah, my course is better.
If you can do it, if you can do it.
Which could cause resentment over time. But I think if you've got a course that has a reputation, as you obviously have, and that has to obviously be sustained by good practice over time for that reputation to be sustained. So obviously
And it wasn't
it's not
me,
just,
it was all the other teachers teaching EMI. So it's interesting. It was nice, to have them think in advance that it was going to be good. But
I'm going to be contacting you, everyone in this room. I have your emails. I have concocted a faculty survey. We're going to put this out as widely as possible, but you will be you'll be the first group, you're the first instructors. And this is really just to go through, this is to give you individually the opportunity to address some of the questions that we've been raising here. Do you teach undergraduates? Do you teach postgraduates? How confident do you feel about teaching in English? What do you get the students to do in English? Do you get them to present orally? Do you get them to write in English? Do you get them to read in English? What's the percentage of Portuguese versus English in the reading materials at undergraduate and postgraduate level? So this question, again, I have tried it out with people and they say no longer than 15 minutes. So if I can have 15 minutes of your time, this will come to you. It's a Google form and I'll send it around to you. And you'll be able, obviously, to see this. Now, this will help us to build up a picture of what is happening at USP and what you see your needs at. And then we can begin to address them, rather than me saying, this is what EMI is.
Yeah.
And forcing you into a particular predestined path.
John, may I say something? What's your expectation in this meeting, for this meeting? It's good to know. I do not know if you have discussed that.
We haven't, that's a good question, I've been avoiding it.
Yes, because it's interesting from after you collecting all this data, plus the expectation that you brought here for today, to see in which way we could manage, because I would also like to say that Aucani is very much concerned with the students' response and students' proficiency. And there are many courses that we are offering completely free for our students that is called Language Education at USP, that is academic learning, let's say academic English that they learn here, reading especially, and then writing also, and then oral communication, academic oral communication for them to participate in conferences and being able to participate in lectures that you brought your professors from abroad, because it's really amazing how much effort we teachers put in inviting our colleagues from abroad, and when they arrive here, depending on in the field of that you are working with, sometimes you don't have enough students attending in the audience because of they are afraid of being exposed to English. So this is a double, how to say, way of trying to match the needs of the university. So I think that starting with also with the expectations that you have for today, it will be interesting.
I have a lot of expectation. I will try to offer a discipline next semester in English. It's a post-graduation discipline. And last year I participated in a winter school, in a school of medicine with students around the world. And I had to participate in congress, conferences in English, presentations in English, talk with colleagues in English by Skype. So I had two students that had a grant to a sandwich PhD, but both didn't pass the IELTS.
Yes, he did pass it, yes.
So it's not good because for me it will be important.
Yes.
Would be important to start a collaboration with
Exactly.
other
Yes,
colleagues.
we have courses that prepare our students for the proficiency exam too. And they are here because of Idiomas Sin Fronteiras, we
Yes.
have the TOEFL.
Mhm.
But then the courses that we have here, and even you participated at the very beginning, it was for preparing for IELTS or TOEFL. But we have applied more than 13,000 exams of TOEFL here at USP in less than 2 years. So we are doing that, but you see the demand is so big, and sometimes the students, it doesn't reach that information to the students. So once we start as professors offering courses in English, then they will run and go and find out which other kinds of courses they
As we say, be Portuguese quando a água bater.
Exactly.
You were talking about your expectations.
Yes, I want to improve my English, try to get better, less English presentation, and help my students to improve too.
Yo has offered courses at the Hospitais Clínicas for the Qualidade da Saúde.
We can come back to that. I have a slide.
Okay.
It's kind of interesting. So it's two things. You want to improve your English.
And the English of my students too. And start to try to bring professors abroad for our course too.
Okay. So that would be to internationalization of teaching, to internationalize the teaching. Okay. And not to have the same kind of experience where that makes the students run away. Okay. So yeah, I mean, that of course pretty much, as we'll see, I have another slide which elicits the next step. But does that kind of echo or parallel other people's expectations that you're interested in training for the faculty, training for the students? Or are you thinking, no, students? I'm okay with students. Or the students are okay with me.
Because another thing that perhaps you have met is that you have students attending your courses in English, but they are not at the same level of understanding. And then that sometimes gives you a kind of, the result of the students are less than they are expected to give to us. So sometimes perhaps kinds of techniques or methods that could help you to reach also the other ones who are in a lower level of English to bring them up.
So there are two things to do. There are things that you can do directly to support students with lower language proficiency if you're teaching English, but you also need to know that there are support mechanisms through languages that we speak. So if you don't know about that, then you can't refer the students to it. So it's an information clearinghouse as much as anything else. It's my own, again, I don't wish to sound critical here, but I will. My own experience of this in the short time, relatively short time that I've been here, is that things are quite fragmented, devolved. That can be a weakness or a strength or both. But very often you don't know what's going on elsewhere in the university. You don't know what's out there. No matter how hard we try to advertise them, until you've got a specific need, you don't pay attention, which is understandable. It's a huge institution.
I've been teaching multi-leveled courses for a long time. So when they begin, you can feel the gap. but as work proceeds and they work together and cooperate, I think they get. And some of them, they can speak English, but they don't have the right register. So those who are starting, they kind of sometimes work better than the ones that were more proficient in a way, you see.
And you are right.
Because they follow the rules.
Yes, and you are right in saying the transfer of knowledge from one language to the other, because another thing that we are trying to do is tailor-made courses for each field of their careers. So we have started with the ASHI next semester, and we will have some undergraduate students that already have been trained in teaching English in language schools, and they will be preparing tailor-made courses, for example, or for fashion, or for biology, or for biomedics, depending on the fields, and they will be very much engaged in preparing this course because it is for their own colleagues. And so at that time, it is kind of team teaching together with our supervision. So this is something that we have to grow up together. That's why I'm asking the expectations that you have on
Sorry,
the needs.
this you're talking about is for the undergraduate students or the professors?
They are undergraduate students already with a title like self-taught. Yes, who are already, how to say, proficiency in teaching English because they have the certificate from Cultura Inglesa or from any
But
other.
the provision is for the students.
Yes.
The provision is not for the lecturers.
No, it is for the students, And then we have the other courses offered by postgraduate students who are already teachers, and then giving courses for the students at ASH.
Yeah.
But that for the teachers is more John who is in charge of that.
From what I can see at the moment, that's the major gap. That there's quite a lot going on. There's quite a lot going on for students, but not so much going on for faculty.
Yes, for teachers. This is the first time.
I gave a workshop for other EMI professors, and I thought it was like that, so I came to see if what you were going to say was similar to what I said would be that now.
Can we have your help
Is that,
in our team?
is that a good thing or not a good thing?
Well, I mean, I talk about very specific techniques in the classroom, for example, to see if they're understanding and homework, that sort of thing, specific types of homework that are not normal for a Portuguese class. And providing a glossary online before.
Yeah, I think what when we were originally thinking about that, that's the kind of thing I actually thought about. I thought, well, I could give a class on academic English. And then I thought, well, we're going to have quite a wide diversity of people here with diverse interests. It'd be more useful, I think, for this to be an orientation meeting, where I figure out the kinds of things that people are doing and what they need, and then we begin to try to satisfy that, rather than a kind of 2 hour, 1 hour blast of something that may or may not be relevant. The way that there are different ways that we can approach this, and Lara has already talked about one of the languages that we speak is basically classroom teaching. We're also working with particular faculties to try to team teach. This is aimed at students. Thinking of professors more and perhaps postgraduate students, the idea, and this will not happen immediately, but the idea is to build up a kind of archive or a kind of portal of blended learning units, which will cover the kind of things that you're talking about. How do you introduce course aims? How do you explain things? How do you improve your pronunciation, which is often a concern. So we'll have kind of subject-specific units, which will be partly online, but partly might have a face-to-face element as well. What I would also like to do is to bring people like you together who've got experience, and for you to present. Say, this is what I can do. This is what works. Over 25 years, this is what works for me. So basically share the good practice that is already here in the university.
Well, I love teaching and I love challenges, so.
I think I'm going to sign you off. Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to have is sessions where people from the community will say, this is what I'm doing. learn from my successes, learn from my failures. Often I can learn more from my failures than my successes.
Because I used to teach English language courses, cultura inglesa, the traditional ones in São Paulo. And I felt the students were not satisfied because these courses did not meet their needs. So I started to work on specific purposes.
Yes, which is why I was doing analysis before we start.
I mean, that's much more effective.
This is what we've been doing. Laura mentioned this is the English for Medicine courses. I've been doing 3 so far with postgraduate students in research article writing, grant application writing, but also conference presentation. At the moment I'm running it through Moodle. I still probably prefer Moodle to Google Classroom. I don't know if people here have a preference. I kind of still prefer Moodle. I'm old-fashioned. But effectively what I do is I structure a course on Moodle. There's a face-to-face meeting at the beginning and at the end of a 6-week module, and then in between every 2 weeks there are lectures on YouTube that we can look at, kind of little webinars of about 10-15 minutes. Then they have tasks to do. They can either upload writing, reading tasks, or sometimes for the conference presentation, they upload videos of themselves, or audio of themselves performing. And I give feedback. Those of you who do blended learning will know that it's time consuming for the professor. And just because you put things in a computer doesn't mean that it goes away. If this is going to work, there's a lot of feedback that goes on. So this is the format, and the format I think works, partly because we're working with busy people. The postgraduate medics have got a lot to do, so they tune in at 11 o'clock at night or 2 o'clock in the morning, and they do it then. Obviously we're in different campuses. We're in Leste, we're in Pinheiros, we're in Exalque, we're in Ribeirão Preto. So the blended learning can be used in all of those places equally effectively. With some face-to-face elements, it doesn't. I sometimes go to Piracicaba, sometimes, but usually I don't. So that is the way that we're thinking, given the huge size, the geographical diversity, and the difficulty in getting people together. This is probably the way that we'll go forward. Support ideas. But I would like to have face-to-face sessions. I think face-to-face sessions do things that you can't do online. It's good to know.
Yeah, they are just transmitting my lessons now, but I try to interact with the people at home, tell them to answer questions and so on. I think they have to pay attention.
The interaction isn't, the interaction has to be.
Yes.
So my expectations, and you can add your expectations to this, but my expectations of the session would be that this is just a preliminary meeting. This is the first meeting of an EMI who's the interest group. We may occasionally meet face-to-face in different combinations, but now that I have your email addresses, I will add you to a Moodle site, unless you ask specifically not to. You're allowed to leave. It's not like the Hotel California. You can leave, but if you want to be kept informed, if you want to have an interest, I can certainly add you to the site. What we will do in the site is we will begin to deliver materials through the site. And again, at the moment, I'm thinking with professors. I'm not thinking of having certificated courses or electives or even extension courses. I'm thinking of materials that you can opt into. It's being done differently in the medical faculty and the agricultural school at the moment. In the medical faculty, they are credit-bearing courses for postgraduates. I get high attendance and they stay till the end. But in Exalque, it's a kind of elective. And like you, I have a lot of people at the beginning, for any book, I have a lot of people at the beginning, and then it kind of shrinks towards the end. The people who finish it like it.
At the chemistry department, they give students credits when they attend my courses. So there are lots of students from the chemical department.
But I don't think I'm going to be giving professors credit. So they will be there and will have to be useful, I for the students to, for the
So they
professors.
like better than than most of the other departments, because most of them come.
Maybe we shall see. But we deliver materials. There will also be a way of having two-way communication. You can contact me and my colleagues and say, you've done this, but we need this. And then we will begin to develop materials for that. And also the way of, I don't think that I am the expert, because I know there's a lot of expertise in this field already. So it's a way of identifying people like you and saying, can you come forward with your experience and share that? And then we can learn from your experience as well. We will begin to develop blended learning. It's one of my jobs for the summer is to have some initial units which will be based on the needs analysis from the faculty survey. And that will identify the priorities, and we can begin to deliver that perhaps in August. And we are planning, as I said, a 3-day international conference that will bring together people from around Brazil who are using EMI. There was a conference in Curitiba last November. There's a network of universities in southern Brazil which are using EMI, a kind of support group. We're going to bring them to this week, share, or some of them, share their experience, share their issues. And I know that I learned a lot from that conference. It was mainly because they gave the conference over to people who were doing it. It wasn't people like me talking about it. It was people sharing their experience. And I'm hoping that we will be able to do that this week. It's a very, very useful exercise in solidarity, probably. So that it's called Brazilian EMI, English as Medium Instruction. I cannot remember what the S stands for. I don't know, solidarity, but it's going to be the second conference. The first one being last year. Symposium, probably. Yeah, you're probably right. It was a one-day event in Curitiba. And we're going to bring people across, probably, if the British Council pays for them, from Southampton, where they have an EMI MOOC. I don't know if you have interest in MOOCs, but there is an EMI MOOC developed by the University of Southampton, which I will put on the Moodle site. It's free up to a point. They call MOOCs.
Yes, like the American books
Yes.
and all this stuff.
Free up to a point. The kind of things that it talks about, pointing, language of instruction, signaling, working with cross-cultural students, giving assessments in English, interacting in presentations in English. The kind of things that you would expect EMI provision to do. So that people should have access to that if they want it. I know in Curitiba, the Federal University, University Federal de Paraná, UFPR, they're also developing online materials there. And they're looking rather suspiciously at Southampton. Here we can bring them together. See what happens. But that is pretty much all I have got to say. So it's now open to you for comments or questions.
Yeah, I have a question. The target professors that this is able to are professors with which degree of proficiency?
I don't know. At the moment, one of my problems at the moment is I don't know who is interested. So one of the functions of the faculty survey, there is one question: how confident are you with your English? Do you want to speak English? Yes, and I'm very confident. Then I don't think you're the problem. We might be able to give you some techniques, and you might be interested in sharing ideas. And you might want to look at the materials out of interest. But I'm kind of interested, probably, ideally, my ideal person is the person who wants to but doesn't feel the confidence and doesn't feel they quite have enough English yet. And then we'll work with them more intensively. And perhaps they will go through more of the materials and perhaps they'll come to more of the face-to-face sessions. But I think ideally we will create materials that can be dipped into or taken more intensively. But at the moment, I'm not sure what the interest is or who is out there.
Yeah, I ask that because I'm concerned about the professors that don't know English. We work at School of Education. We are not professors, but we are part of a center for study and research of teaching foreign languages. And we offer English courses for the undergraduate students from all over USP and professors at School of Education. And we have some that lately have followed our courses, but many of them can't because of the schedule, or they start and then they can because they have examinations or they have to travel and etc. But they suffer the pressure to learn and teach. So there are no undergraduate courses in English in School of Education. And the post-graduation courses that happen there are when some foreign professor is invited, and then they are like short, like 3-4 lectures while the professor is there.
Yeah, and it will be a culture shock for the students because they're not used to it.
Yeah, I remember one offered by Diana, for postgraduate students.
Yeah, but I don't think it's
Because the first time it was okay, but the second time they offered the course, there was not enough students.
yeah, so we
So
have this.
if I throw the question back to you, what would you like to see from EMI provision? What would you like to see from EMI support?
I thought that maybe this model, of course, but to help those professors that want to learn, but they don't have time to go to course in classroom, that they could profit from that.
Yeah, that's probably my ideal professor. But I think there's going to be people at different levels who will engage at different levels with it. But the person that you're talking about is probably the core person. So yes, that is what I'm thinking of. So I'll be interested in how that person engages with the materials and how much help the provision seems to be. Yeah. So
That's why the survey is important in order for you to be able to group the people.
yeah, I mean, there is one question in the survey. I'm hoping the survey will go out not just to people who are interested or doing it. The survey will go out quite widely. I'll talk a lot about the possibility of actually making it USP-wide, the survey. But one of the questions, I did test it on an undergraduate student, said how long did it take to complete this? And she completed it in 15 minutes. And she said, well, you shouldn't ask one of these questions. She said, one of the questions is about how do you feel about EMI at USP? Negative, positive, it's a 5-point Likert scale. Very negative, very positive, neutral. And she said, don't answer. People will not tell you if they're negative about it. I want to know, because I want to know what the resistance is. And I want to know if we need to sell it. Or are people out there tremendously positive, a bit desperate for help and not knowing where to find it? So I'm kind of curious. I'm hoping people will answer that honestly. Because it's not an anonymous survey, people will not tell you, which is possibly true, but I want to ask the question anyway.
Will it be anonymous?
No, because if people are crying for help, I want to know who they are. But it's not like it's not a political question. I mean, it comes back to what is the role of English at USP, what's the role of Portuguese at USP? And it is a political question for small P in many departments, including my own. I'm kind of curious. I think we have to accept the realities, accept the tensions, and work with the tensions. My own feeling, for what it's worth, is that EMI is only valuable if it empowers you and the students. If it disempowers you, it is a danger. And if you feel that it disempowers you, it is a danger. And if people are feeling disempowered by my presence, I want to know about it so I can work on it.
I would like to share an experience.
Sure, please do.
I'm from ECA. My department is public relations and virtual advertising.
Whoa!
And tourism. 2 weeks ago, they asked us to offer 2 classes in English. So, 1 week to decide what the professor are okay, ready to do this. 2 classes. But every people disappear or are not confident to do this.
No, exactly.
That's a problem.
Yeah, it is a huge.
Not just a discipline.
Yeah,
Yes.
I totally sympathize with that. But if somebody's interested, we are the people to come and help. That I think is our role, is to support people who want to. But sometimes I recognize that people are told, no, you must. That I think is not particularly positive, but it's not something I can help.
I think we have many problems to put this idea in reality.
So can I ask, who are they? Who are the people who ask? Who is asking you to do it?
Because the CERIT, we have a program for our students, and we have a discipline for the students around the world. So the discipline in English.
Yeah.
It's a difficult. But I have other idea. I don't know about if it's possible. But well, when we see this environmental, academic, etc., I heard you and your experiences. I think our proposals are so formal. We think in class, we think in disciplines, we think in the environment with control. Totally. Our control, we have this lesson, and why not we think English in this idea in our life, academic life, in the parties and the places when we live the English experience together in some different areas, and we don't have this in university for Portuguese, of course, no? Where is the place where we are meeting to take a coffee?
Yeah, so you're thinking of kind of English immersion.
I think necessarily the English is in the university life, not just the work, but the life, the relation with the people. I think it's different.
That's a lovely idea, and I think it's something that students from DLM, students from English, can facilitate. So you have a place on campus which will be a kind of English environment space. People will have to know about it, people will have to know what happens there, people have to feel comfortable moving into that space. So, but I think that's a lovely idea. I know that in other institutions people try this. So the University of Macau, where I was stationed before this, which was an English medium university in Maine, but most of the students spoke Cantonese. There were residential colleges, and some of the residential colleges were badged as English environments, and they encouraged social events, coffees, tables tables at meal times where people would come together and they'd speak English. There was another residential college that was badged as the Portuguese, because of the history of the colony, the ex-colony. So the Portuguese colleges and English colleges, and people would go there and they would interact individually. I think that's a lovely idea, and again, it comes back to the culture of live. Creating an environment at home in English. So we could certainly look at that. I know that does. It's a nice idea.
That's what we are trying to do here at Aucani, with not only with our students, but also with students that are coming from abroad, to have a meeting place that also the colleagues from the students coming from other countries, they could meet, sit, study together, and then the medium would be English as a medium of communication among them. So this is a new building. We are trying to create that space, at least those who come for Portuguese as a foreign language could meet with our students who are taking courses in English, and so they can meet and talk together while they are waiting to come upstairs and to have their regular courses. So this is something that is coming for next year. Little by little we are doing that.
Marches are great.
Yes.
So it's an English party, so people
Yes, that's
it.
I had an experience in the United States, so in Dutch University. there were sessions, and the faculty and students, Brazilian or Portuguese students, that, well, we went to this session to talk in Portuguese to Americans that wants to speak in Portuguese, etc.
Yes, I think that that's the best way, that they could meet. It's like a library, that we don't have spaces in library for people meeting there.
Like a party.
That it is more for a special
Informal
place.
meeting.
One question that I have is simply about the dissemination of this kind of information, and that is my idea for the middle site. So for something like the middle site, I hope that everybody here and everybody who will be interested will have access to it. But it's not necessarily a course. It might deliver courses if people are interested, but it will also be a discussion group. It'll be a way of disseminating information about initiatives like this. It'll be a way of raising ideas, useful ideas. It'll be a way of raising concerns. And if somebody is coming to you and say, well, you must teach a course in English next semester on this subject, and you're panicking, you've got somebody to come and say, well, can you give me some support? And we'll try to give you specific support for doing that. I didn't imagine that people would be put in that situation. It's a bit of a surprise to me that people are being told you must teach in English next semester, in which case that gives EMI a lot more urgency than I had anticipated. But it's useful to know what's happening. And that is certainly the kind of thing we would be interested in trying to support. There's only so far one of them, but I hope there will be more.
Maybe.
And we will have lots of exchange programs. That students.
Yeah.
On other places.
I was told that they wanted to have at least all the basic, first and second year courses in English, at least one section every term, so that they could advertise that, so that they could attract foreign students, because then they would. Yeah, no.
Sorry.
And then, so that they could have the right to send students from here to there. It's like a 1-for-1 thing. So they got more students to come to Brazil.
So which context is it?
As at the Federal University of USA. It's in Santander.
Yeah, I know that.
It's a 1-for-1 exchange. If they got more students coming in from other universities, that they could send more.
Yeah, I think that's happening around the world. I can see dual degrees popping up here and there, and there is much more graduate mobility. Again, I come largely out of the European experience where things like the Erasmus and Socrates programs created much more student, until Brexit, created much more mobility in and out of the United Kingdom. So that kind of student mobility is becoming part and parcel. I think it's more difficult. I mean, we've talked about this. It's more difficult structurally to speak, for various historical and structural reasons, for that kind of exchange to go on. But I think it's coming. More of that kind of thing is coming. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about it. Because I tend to like to be a long-term institution rather than just move around all the time. But yeah, I think we're seeing more of that for various reasons. And we're also seeing much more online education. You can sit down side by with a degree at Stanford. Online, totally. So there are different ways of delivering education. I also think, this is me looking at a crystal ball, I'm also hoping that at some point in the future, the market might change and Portuguese might have a greater status in academic discourse. As Thomson Reuters, who's currently driving the EMI agenda, decides that the market is saturated, it might go back to multilingual research. But I think that's 2 or 3 steps down the road into the future. I'm part of a research group that looks at the multilingual nature of research, sometimes covertly multilingual. International research groups working in lots of different languages. It's kind of assumed that everybody speaks English. That's not always the case. Any other questions or comments, or is there anything else that you think that we should or could be providing that we're not kind of planning to? Or that I haven't covered?
What's the next step in this group?
I think.
What's our homework?
It
Yes.
could help us with the marketing. I think
Yes.
one problem here at USP is still communication.
Yes, we know that, yes.
So
It is.
Can I ask a question? Does everybody here have access to Moodle? Can, no, do you? If I add your name to a Moodle site, are you going to be excluded?
No, because she's a professor here.
Okay, the current question is everybody a professor here?
No, but could we leave, the email of our coordinators for the professors in methodology?
Sure.
I think
But do you have access to Moodle?
I do.
Yeah, okay.
I think that what you need is their USP number.
All I need
Just that,
is,
isn't it?
if I have your email address or your ISP number, even your name, I can add you. If I can't add you, I will email you. But I can probably add you automatically. What I'm also planning to have is probably access by password, so that if you can have if you have an USP account and you get into USP Moodle, all you need to do is add the password and your partner and you get access to it. So if you want to share the password to friends, anybody who's interested is welcome. I would like the whole university to be part of this. I do not imagine that everybody will use the site in the same way or to the same extent. It's supposed to be flexible. I got a very interesting email from one of the students at Aucani, because I think I started with 30 students and ended up with 6 who finished all the materials. But then at the end of the day, I got an email from one of the students who said, "Thank you for the course. I didn't do the activities." It was brilliant. It was really helpful. So in a way, she was kind of invisible to me, but she still found it. I was totally happy with that. I thought, this has been helpful. That's what it's for. I don't need to see that you're there. So I imagine that people will engage with the materials, but they have to be, for me, they have to be useful. If I'm going to commit time to preparing them.
And besides being interactive, the Moodle helps that in that sense. Whatever you need, you can put there, and then you can imagine how to help the people.
So we'll have a discussion sites and we'll be able to say,
Suggestions. Has such a long experience in teaching.
I need this next semester, exploration.
Exactly, no, because it's important to leave this meeting with some kind of aim of where are we going now, because this is the first group, so whatever suggestions you have and you can put there, if you don't have them now, but at least to communicate that to us, so we can frame something that is tangible and concrete for you to exchange also your experiences among yourselves.
Well, my aim is to send you the faculty survey and you can complete that. We will be staying in touch. We will be having other sessions. It might be more of the teaching kind of sessions that you anticipate. I will badge what they are and what they're for. And then you can decide whether or not you want to be part of that session, whether it's going to be useful for you. But again, I'll also be contacting people and asking people if they would like to share their own experience if that's relevant and valuable. Because as I know, there is a wealth of experience that we should be tapping into more effectively.
And we hope to have all of you in October. That will be really very important to receive information about that and try to participate.
Okay, a word of Brazilian English that I have learned to use in a slightly different way is doubts. Does anybody have any doubts?
I have questions for those who teach, have disciplines in English in undergraduation or post-graduation courses. Do you have foreigner students? Yeah.
I have Nigerian, French, Spanish, Côte d'Ivoire.
But she's teaching English, she's not teaching
You teach calculus,
Yeah.
right? And do you have foreigner students or are they Brazilian speaking?
They were all Brazilians. They kept on saying that they were trying to attract foreign students, and that's why they had me teaching English, but so far, no.
Not yet, yeah.
Not yet. Only Brazilians who were crazy enough to take calculus in English.
So I think there's actually, currently there's only a very small proportion of foreign students or overseas students at this week, and many of them are Spanish speakers who don't have the same
Right.
necessity of shifting into English. So, I know this because I'm taking a Portuguese as a second language course in Central Linguas, and I'm surrounded by Venezuelans, Bolivians, Cubans.
But the Colombians are good at it.
Yeah, they're good at it.
But
So,
it is positive to have Brazilian students in your courses because they are preparing themselves or for taking courses abroad or for taking courses with foreign professors when they come here. So at the same time, I think it is positive, despite we don't have so many foreign students yet.
I was just curious if we had
Yes,
as many
yes.
foreigner students.
Next semester, it will be my first experience teaching English. And I have the student that my discipline is not a course of English, but a course in English. It's more, we had this idea to give a course in English to attract more foreign students. So, well, but I don't know. Maybe.
I think the hardest thing when all the students are Portuguese speaking, it's easier. They don't understand it's like that blank look. You can immediately repeat that sentence in Portuguese. And they go, ah. But if you have mixed language students, I think it's more challenging.
That's why I want to know what people are doing, because I think if it's mainly Brazilian Portuguese speakers, then there's one set of strategies. And
in fact, since we do not have still many English courses, we do not attract students that do not know Portuguese. Most of the students that come here have at least basic Portuguese skills that allow them to follow our courses, the Portuguese courses. What does not mean that they don't attend these courses, but it's not mandatory for them. What we are trying to have is a critical mass, so critical amount of courses that really we can tell the students, so we have here a package, for instance, my field electrical engineering, there is a set of courses, so the Chinese can start coming, the Japanese or Sweden or whatever, because we are offering something, but it's not the case yet.
The Colombians come because they didn't have to pay for the tuition.
That's what I'm you see the Chinese and Japanese coming as exchange students?
Very few.
Yeah, but when you say bring the Chinese, bring the Japanese.
No, if we are start offering English courses, we heard this tale many times talking to Chinese communities or that are visiting us. If you could provide English course, we would send students. But
So would you expect those students to pay fees?
No.
You see, I'm European, I cannot understand this.
Yeah.
You're offering free education to the world.
Or, yeah. Really says that they are not paying. Yeah.
Because the point that I was making, I don't know what it is, but one of the things that's driving EMI elsewhere is attracting faculty and students from other countries.
Yeah.
Because it pays.
That's not. Yeah. But what was the apply for it?
Yeah, that was good.
All these I think are
Yeah.
the main. Yeah, but not the one that you mentioned about paying fees, because that's not.
Okay, thanks for coming.
Back at school.
Yes, we will.
Yeah, so again, I don't want to detain you, but thank you very much indeed. I find that very useful, which is probably the main thing.
It's a start.
It's a start, and
Yeah,
we will definitely keep in
We
touch.
count with you in this start, okay?
What I'm planning to do is actually have some academic English classes starting in August probably. And some online, some face-to-face, and certainly you'll be invited to those. And if you think they're going to be useful.
But just one comment that have in mind that this international office really supports this kind of activities. We are strongly committed to have whatever is necessary to to increase and then to allow that possible.
Exactly. You are the courageous ones.
The early
Some of
adopters.
you, those who are starting, and so that's good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For your time.